ever feel like you might have slipped into a parallel universe, an alternate reality? I do today.
While in the United Kingdom, the Lotus 7 has essentially spent the last 50 years staying exactly the same under the guidance of Caterham, in the Netherlands, things took a slightly different path.
This is the Donkervoort F22.
With the soundtrack of a Group B Audi Quattro and a chassis containing proprietary carbon fibre technology that's used in both Formula 1 and the World Rally Championship, it has certainly got presence. But has it strayed too far from what made Colin Chapman's original so brilliant?
The question is, does this Dutch Lotus 7 still work on a British B road?
If this film makes you feel like going Dutch and then swapping your Datsun for a Donkervoort, then why not head over to HagertyMarketplace.com. You can auction for free and keep 100% of the sale price. To find out more, just click on the flat little link in the stealthy description down below. Let's start with the name, F22, which obviously instinctively made me think of the Lockheed Martin Boeing stealth supersonic fighter. But this has nothing to do with aeroplanes and doesn't have a hyphen in it. Instead, it has everything to do with just what a family company Donkervoort is. It was founded in 1978 by Joop Donkervoort, who had seen his first Lotus aged 16 and was instantly besotted. When he was 29, he began by importing Sevens into the Netherlands and converting them to meet European regulations. His first car was the S7, then came the S8 and then the S8A. And A stood for Amber, his first daughter. That then progressed into the D8, and D in this case stood not for Donkervoort but Denis, his son. Denis now runs the company, and this is the first car under his stewardship. So, to stick with convention, he named it after his eldest daughter, Philippa, who was born in 2022. If I tell you that her younger sister, Phoebe, was born in 2024, you can probably have a good guess at the name of Donkervoort's next car. But what about this one?
It's a really curious mixture of, in some ways, the very familiar, this sort of driving position with the long nose in front of me, the feeling that you're sitting right on the rear wheels here, legs out straight, so I'm sitting fairly upright in here, but I mean, for a start, I've got a solid roof above me.
It is removable, but I think it looks rather good with it in place, and it certainly helps with the British weather.
Then there are other little luxuries, things like the heated seats down here with 2 levels of warming for my posterior. There's air conditioning as well, and obviously a digital screen here. The steering wheel is actually quite a bit larger than you'd expect to find in the Caterham as well, which sort of stays in line with the fact that the whole car is that much bigger. There's definitely more room in here, and it's wider, so this is about 1.9 metres wide as opposed to about sort of 1.6, 1.7 for an original sort of Lotus 7 chassis. If you drive a Lotus 7 with the roof on, then I've certainly always found it a little bit claustrophobic really, but this, you don't get that at all. Donkervoort says that it's tailored this to fit, well, Dutch people, who can be quite tall.
They're often cited as the tallest nation on Earth, with an average male height of over 6 foot, and the F22 has been designed to accommodate someone up to 6'10".
Certainly, me at 6'5", I fit nice and easily. This particular car doesn't have quite the fit and finish and polish that we've come to expect from hypercars and resto mods and, well, generally hand-built cars of recent years, but this is the test car. This is the pre-production prototype, so we've probably got to cut it some slack, I think. It's wearing its 40,000 kilometres, certainly, with its calluses and wrinkles, and I do like a test car.
Perhaps one of the biggest departures for Donkervoort came in 1999 when the D8 switched engine supplier from Ford to Audi. For many years it was the venerable 1.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder, but then in 2013 the D8 GTO graduated to the 2.5 litre 5-cylinder turbo. The F22 has the iron block version rather than the all-aluminium successor that you'll find in the current RS3 because it is reportedly more reliable. It's been tuned by Abt with new pistons, conrods, exhaust and obviously a new map.
The end result, did I mention that? 493 brake horsepower, 472 pounds-feet of torque. Something that weighs 750 kilos. That is a lot of performance. 0 to 60 they claim is just 2.5 seconds and, well believe it.
The gearbox is a 5-speed Tremec shift that I think is best described as stubby.
Short of throw, weighty, mechanical. It's really satisfying to use actually. There's certainly no danger of a misshift. Even in Audis, this was always an engine that really liked revs. You might not expect that given it's a turbocharged thing, lots of nice low down torque, but to be honest in this it feels happy only really once it gets up sort of above 3000 RPM. Below that it sounds kind of like sort of a little bit clattery, with a lot of sort of noise from the engine that's not very musical. You need to give it the revs to really open up that lovely 5-cylinder warble. However, once you do that,
you get the full Group B soundtrack with images of Roll, Mouton and Stig dancing in your head. I feel we're heading slightly back into parallel universes again. Time to come back to some sort of reality.
Underneath the frankly wild exterior, which makes it look like the automotive little brother of the Batmobile, is what Donkervoort calls a hybrid chassis. So you've got the traditional, almost old-fashioned tubular bit, but then bonded to that is something rather interesting called X-Core.
Donkervoort invented this new type of carbon fibre manufacturing, patented it, and then set up a whole separate company to produce it. What makes it different is that sheets of carbon fibre are pushed outwards into a mould by an expanding foam in the middle. It allows for very little wastage, lower temperatures, and then the ability to prioritise strength or lightweight with unusually complex shapes. It's been used by Toyota Gazoo Racing for both its Le Mans Hypercar and its WRC Yaris Rally1 car. And some Formula 1 teams have also used it, but they can't say which ones. So mysterious.
The result of adding in that X-Core is that the torsional stiffness of this chassis has gone up from 28,000 Newton meters per degree, which was already pretty good. I mean, that's a supercar level as it is, all the way up to 58,000 Newton meters per degree. So basically doubled thanks to X-Core, and that's, well, Veyron Koenigsegg levels of torsional stiffness. And of course what that provides is a fantastic platform for the suspension to work on. We've got tractive dampers here which are adjustable over sort of 5 different levels. 0 or 1 is all you need for the road though. Certainly a bumpy road like this.
I'd like to have an even softer option for the suspension just to let it breathe a little more over the really rough stuff, but it never felt like the workout I thought it might.
I've got power assisted steering in here. It's an electric system from a Dutch company called Easy Steering, which I remember from years ago. My friend Harry Metcalf put some on his Lamborghini Countach. It's slightly strange in that there's not actually that much assistance at low speeds, so it's sort of parking speeds, but that's in order to make it, well, retain a decent amount of weighting at higher speeds. But perhaps a variable system might be a good thing to look at in the future. This has also got adjustable ABS down here, and you've got rev matching and flat shift if you wanted to. Although the rev matching is one of the ones where you have to be on the brakes in order for it to recognise that you're making a downshift, so it's kind of better suited to track, I feel, than road. Having the ABS system on this is really nice because it's one of those things that you think, do you really need it? But just in those situations, certainly in the wet, it gives you a lot of confidence. And with so much power, you want to have reassurance in that stopping power. You've got to do a lot to trigger in the driver. As ever, that lack of mass really makes itself felt. Braking is extraordinary, the acceleration got to all there. The light steering, the quick steering means it feels so nimble through the corners. for all its huge amounts of grip, there is a real lightness to the way it drives, which is lovely.
Being at the skinnier end of the scale isn't always easy though. There are sometimes downsides to a car being as light as the proverbial feather. In this case, tyres, because Donkervoort couldn't use an off-the-shelf semi-slick solution from the likes of Michelin or Pirelli because, well, the car's not heavy enough to really get it working. Enter the Nankang Rubber Tyre Corporation from Taiwan, who've actually been going over 60 years, and they did this one bespoke for Donkervoort. The really impressive thing was how the tyres dealt with the wet roads we encountered, relaying a pleasing amount of feedback and giving a lot of confidence, which is where I thought they might struggle.
What I think Donkervoort has done really well is they've given this obviously huge amounts of performance and grip in the corners, but it still feels like a Lotus 7, and that hasn't always been the case with developments of that chassis. The weather today certainly feels like a parallel universe to yesterday when it was really, really wet, but it was actually really nice to be able to drive the car in the wet as well. Because you get a really good impression of the balance of the chassis. So this can generate up to 2.3 G in the drive, which is pretty extraordinary. But in the wet, obviously, all those characteristics you'd expect of this sort of car come back again. So the fact that you do feel like there's a lot of nose out there that you tend to really pour into the corner. You feel the front end grip first before working the rear through the latter part of the corner. When it does start to slide, you feel it pivots around the point quite a long way forward, so you feel like it's perhaps sort of exaggerates the angle of any slip. It does still feel like a car that you can drive. You can get involved with dynamics, the very specific dynamics of it. It's not just all grip. It really is quite a trick, because where Caterham has tried to evolve the 7 over the years, and to be honest, just always gone back to that original formula, Donkervoort does seem to have cracked it.
Things like the 21 and then the CSR never quite managed to supplant the original formula. And I'm not saying the F22 does either. The original 7 design remains one of the best motoring experiences out there, even with less than 20% of the F22's power and vastly less grip. But Donkervoort has managed to develop it in a way that is very impressive and interesting.
As ever, price cost is a thorny issue. I mean, this costs somewhere around £300,000, particularly once you start adding options onto it, which is a massive amount for a Lotus 7 derivative, if you like. However, it's pretty cheap in hypercar terms, and this certainly has hypercar performance.
It's got hypercar looks, or at least a fairly wild aesthetic. It's got a hypercar technology story and hypercar exclusivity too, if perhaps not quite the fit and final finish of some hypercars on this particular one. So maybe it isn't too much of a stretch. The Lotus 7 hypercar from an alternate Dutch reality.
Unlike most parallel universes in books and comics and films, this is one I'm glad exists.